Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mind Muscle Connection podcast. Today I have a guest episode and it's Steve Hall. So Steve, I think we said in the episode this is his 14th time on, so he's been on a lot. He's a guy that I followed when I first started doing podcasting and when I first got in the fitness industry too. I came across him around like 2017, 2018. So I've been following Steve for a really long time. It's been super cool to see his progress. And so in this episode, we talk about advanced hypertrophy training for him, how he's managing extremely high volumes, how he's fueling and recovering from that training. We talk about the Logbook. We talk about his knee issues that he's had come up recently, how he's working around those, and how he's a little bit more managing training loads or managing, what he's doing there. He's, like I said, we talk about his recovery and we talk about full range of motion training and how maybe his views on that have changed over time. We talk about that at the end. Then we talk about his upcoming prep season as well too. And then we do also briefly touch on his time in Bali, where he was able to take some other people through training sessions and some things that he learned during that time. A great episode with Steve as always. He's someone I just really enjoy talking to. He's made a ton of progress and he really is one of the great people in the fitness industry. He's just so generous with his time. He's super nice and he's definitely a person that he is exactly how he portrays himself on social media. Hope you guys enjoy this episode. But first, before we dive in, if you are looking for one-on-one coaching, looking to take your body composition to the next level, maybe your training performance, maybe your recovery is not where it needs to be, maybe energy's low and you want to take things to the next level, or maybe you've just been stuck. You don't really know where to go, or maybe you fell off a little bit and you need help getting back on track. And these are all things I help clients work on: build muscle, lose some body fat, and improve our body composition. Again, like I said, take things really to the next level there. So if that sounds like you and you're motivated to dial things in and learn more about your body and what you need to specifically do, then one-on-one coaching is for you. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can reach out to me on Instagram, Jeff, HOEHN_, or fill out the call, sign up for a call, and we can discuss things in more detail. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode with Steve Hall, and I'll talk to you soon. Steve, welcome back on to the pod, man. Super pumped to have you on. I'm actually just going to count this up real quick to see how many times you've been on. So this is going to be your 14th time. Does that seem like a higher or lower number than you thought?
Probably higher. I don't know why, because I know I'm super grateful to be on chatting with you. As I always say, Jeff, I always enjoy our discussions, and to have heard that it's been a year since I was last on, 14 sounds like a lot. So
man.
I appreciate being on here plenty, and always, like I said, enjoy talking to you, Jeff.
Yeah, man, it's always good. Like I said, we just can catch up. And I've been following you, man, since probably 2017, 2018 was when I first came across you. You and AJ Morris kind of around the same time when I was went through my short competing period of my life. Maybe I'll do it again in the future. We'll see. But yeah. And so you were
right now, right?
Yeah, you were the second episode, which is actually one of my better performing ones from a download perspective. So
cool.
Titled Building Muscle 101. Probably worked on the title since that period of time. But yeah, man, always good to have you on, still follow up with you and everything. Like I was telling you off air, I saw a video of you and I don't know how your arms can get bigger and your delts can get bigger, but they are. So you found a way to continue to push that genetic ceiling there.
Yeah, trying. I think, man, it's funny because I think a lot of people, I don't know where their reference point is for my physique anymore, but I think quite often it's when I'm my leanest or in like comp prep and maybe my last shows, and just everything, when you're that lean, and you're not a genetic freak, everything just shrinks. I look at my arms when I was at Dulds in 2024, which is ages ago now, but I'm like, man, they look like twigs, and I'm meant to have big arms. So yeah, hopefully they've grown, because actually, despite them being a strong point, I think they're still weak compared to a lot of pro bodybuilders, which I'm trying to compete with now. And then the delts have been a huge priority. My arms actually haven't been a priority at all, as you can probably imagine, but my delts, specifically side delts, have been like just the objective. Since I don't have the widest clavicles, I need as much meat on those shoulders as possible.
Yeah. I was looking at one of your workouts and I think I saw on there, I think you were doing like the seated kind of behind the back cable lateral there, which I feel like is a great delt exercise. I love doing like behind the back or even if it's dual or single, I feel like those work really well. I saw you did, I think it was 7 sets. Is that true? Is that kind of what you're looking at doing for?
7 sounds very reasonable. A fucking ball ache.
Is that just like a pre-planned thing, or you kind of go and see how you're feeling that day and kind of doing it? Or is that just like big picture, you're just really trying to hit delts? And so it's like, hey, what can I recover from with the delts? And I would imagine that delts are probably something that you could get away with doing a little bit more with overall.
Yeah, for sure. I haven't hit a recovery wall with my delts. If anything was to go, I think it would be the shoulder joint before the actual delt muscle. So I'm just aware of that, and also just very aware that there is diminishing returns, and I'm happy to invest into diminishing returns, but to a certain point. I think it was the meta regression from Jake Remmett, where he found basically, I think it was like 11 sets was the number they came to. Obviously, it's very rough, but past 11 sets, we can't be sure if you're actually getting anything from that. But up to 11, yeah, there's vastly diminishing returns past however many, but up to 11 we're good. So I try not to let too many of my muscles get past and also sets within a session because of that, but also just you'll probably relate to this, or anyone who's trained. Once you've done about 10 sets for a muscle group, it feels like you're cooking it. And especially something like the delts, which they will be hit within my kind of compound lifts too. So getting much more than 5 to 8 sets for my side delt within a single kind of session feels like a lot. And I tend to, essentially what I try to do, especially because the delts are a priority, I'm just moving as high as I can get to and feel like, hey, it's challenging, it's a lot, I'm getting to my mental and physical cap where I feel like I can perform and I'm getting good feedback from it. I'm not excited about doing any more, and I think I might be like causing myself an issue where it wouldn't be sustainable. So that is my general volume, as it were. So yeah, I train them 6 times a week and anywhere from 5 to probably 8 sets. And I may even play around with going above that, because we might talk about this. Some of the lessons when I was in Bali at the Natural Bodybuilding Summit was because we were training in groups, I had to get efficient ways of getting people through a good amount of volume. And that was those time-saving techniques of, I've done antagonistic supersets, I rely on those a lot, but I haven't so much lent on myo reps or drop sets. And actually in those sessions, we were doing them because intensifiers are fun to make sure everyone's pushing really hard. But they're a really effective way of getting in more effective reps close to failure. If I can utilize more of those, actually it makes the density of my workouts even higher. So I might be able to even get more theoretical volume in, assuming that one of those kind of clusters or drops counts as about points of a normal straight set, which I've generally always relied on because time hasn't been a limiter. But now it's like I could spend 3 hours theoretically in the gym, but man, I don't want to spend 3 hours in the gym. My body doesn't want to be there. So yeah, I've rambled along there, but yeah, that's some of my thoughts surrounding it.
Yeah, with your delts real quick, since that is like an area, what else so 6 times a week you're training them. So are they always, I guess maybe what are some things you're doing to make sure you prioritize them outside of training them 6 days a week? Are you putting them earlier in the session? Are you using some kind of short and lengthened? Because I'm just curious to hear kind of ins and outs of your delt training.
Yeah, it feels, because I haven't ever met a recovery limit, I don't really feel like I have to worry about, I shouldn't do too much lengthened stuff because that could limit my recovery capacity. But because I am doing so much of it, I also want spice. I want variation. I want something a bit different. So I do throw in, at the moment, I think I'm doing like 3 cable variations, which is basically behind the body, like across the body, and then more of like a Y raise. So I'm hitting like front and like side and front, and then side and rear, and then like pure side delt with that. So I do those 3 variations, all at like hand height cable, try and bias the lengthen position. And then I do, today I actually did, and most sessions, all upper body sessions at the start of the workout. Lower body sessions, I'll kind of throw them in when I've got the time, because lower body is also a massive priority. So on my lower body sessions, it's just kind of, okay, if I'm waiting around for a piece of kit or I can do an unrelated superset, I might throw them in there. But the reason I laughed is because today's lower body session, I finished with dumbbell lateral raises, and I just did a run the rack twice, as in like proper old school bodybuilding, went from 18 kilos down to 2 kilos and just to failure. And again, just using that principle of, hey, they're basically drop sets. Running the rack is basically a bunch of drop sets. And I don't actually know how many drops there necessarily are, but there's something like 8. So running the rack twice actually accumulates a lot of volume, but it's super quick. It's kind of fun, like just running the rack. It's like, fuck, let's just go. And I just log the first set that I do, which is like 18 kilograms, how many reps do I get on that? And then all the other ones are just, hey, they're effective reps or sets close to failure, so let's do that. And then I have a prime lateral raise, machine lateral raise in my gym. So I do that twice in the week as well. And I just vary. Sometimes I sit front on into that, like my chest on the pad, which I think is the way they like have the diagram on the side saying, yeah, face into it. But I saw some people facing out of it. I was like, actually, that feels pretty good. So I just switch things up like that. But bias it to lengthen position and yeah, vary rep ranges, and I'll also vary some of the intensifiers that I'll use, but mostly relying on either kind of rest pause, myo rep style, or some drop sets.
Yeah, no, that's so it sounds like it's structured, but there's also maybe a little bit of flexibility kind of built in terms of what exactly you're kind of doing from a week to week standpoint, or is it just kind of maybe what you want to try, or like what does that kind of look like?
Yeah, every week, like every session, I'll have a specific variation of lateral raise that I want to hit, and I'll have the set volume there as well, and then I'll go through it. It's just for my lower body sessions, the exercise order might vary. So it's pretty structured, but I don't, if I'm doing drop sets or clusters, which I'll have a number that I want to do. So that's also pre-programmed. I just won't log those because that's in the past something I tried to do. And it put me, I think it's one of the biggest reasons that really put me off them because I was very much logbook. I need to track everything, blah, blah, blah. But it was, yeah, it ended up putting me off them. I was like, why do I need to log those? Let's just make sure the first straight set's going in the direction I need it to. And that kind of tells me that, hey, the other work is doing what I need it to in terms of if I'm progressing, it's growth stimulus for me.
And you never experience any sort of soreness or anything like that in your delts, and you pretty much are able to hop back on and hit them each day like that with the intensity you want?
The only time I'll experience soreness is if I do something very novel,
Okay.
like quite different to what I am currently doing. And then otherwise, no. And I quite like getting side delt soreness. I'm like, whoa, that's so weird. But yeah, well, generally, no, unfortunately. I don't know why I say unfortunately. It's like, well, it's probably fortunate. It just allows me to do and recover from more. But I guess unfortunately, because maybe my kind of top ceiling of volume that my growth is higher than what someone else would have to do, which is probably true considering my training age.
Yeah. I guess in a rough kind of estimate, how many sets would you say you're doing kind of per week? And I know you obviously can get super interesting around are you counting some of your compound work towards that, but what would you kind of say is that average range that you're kind of sitting at?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm certainly above the probably close to maybe even 40 to 50 now that I'm utilizing more of these kind of clusters and drop sets. And that's not including any fractional work that I might get from compound lifts.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy, man. Your volume do you feel like it's trended up over, I feel like it's trended up over time, just kind of looking at your training, but that's not like doing a deep dive into your training, but it seems like it has kind of trended up over time, what you've done compared to the past.
Yeah, I think actually when you were saying you initially were following me, I remember there was a time post show that I think because I competed I did a back specialization because I was like, my back is awful. And I think I got 20 sets for back, like wow. Totally. But I was specializing on it. I don't know what the rest of my volume was at. But I remember looking back at some logbook and tying it up and being like, that was ridiculous. The thing is, at that time, my quality of work really wasn't there. My technique was fine, but I certainly was not pushing myself as close to failure and certainly wasn't utilizing any kind of lengthened partials to make sure the back was even closer to failure. So that was a bit of excess. And then I've gone through periods. I've always been, if someone was to try and put me in a camp, I've always been more towards the higher volume.
Yeah.
But I certainly was following a more of a volume cycling approach in the past where I'd start lower, trying to aim for an MEV, and then I'd move up to a theoretical MRV or even surpass it, try and overreach, super compensate and come back out, which worked, but I don't think and I no longer use that approach. And then I did in my off season before 2024, I don't know where my volumes were, I'd have to look back, but they were reasonably high. I was following an upper lower split for the majority of that off season as well, 6 times per week. So they did get pretty high. And then in comp prep, my wrist just came right down the last couple of months. So I moved to a push-pull leg split. Volume was maybe half what it is now, to be honest. And then as I recovered after that, I moved back to an upper lower split a few months after competing. And then just have been working with around where I am now for the majority of my off season, where I talk about it like walking towards this cliff edge of volume. And in the past, I'd push myself over that edge to force myself to have to deload and hope for some super compensation magic. Whereas now I kind of walk to that cliff edge and I'm just like, I hover here for as long as I can sustain. And maybe sometimes I'll experiment dropping in a little bit more or less, but you start getting into just systemic fatigue issues as well, where you're like, my delts might be able to handle more, but I can't handle more.
So would you say then I guess what it kind of drove you to kind of change that? Is it just like research, or would you also say it's kind of a combination of figuring out what's kind of worked best for you and everything like that?
Yeah, the research definitely helped because the great work from the guys at Data Driven Strength. Yeah. So I think this was Josh Pellen's research looking at set volume and the impact on hypertrophy. It just seemed like, yes, there's vastly diminishing returns, which for the vast majority of people, they should absolutely think about. And volume for the vast majority of trainees is overrated. But for someone who is like myself, trying to completely cap out their muscle growth, There doesn't seem to be like a problem with doing more. It just seems like more does seem to get you more. It's just less every time. So I was just like, wow, let's lean into that. And I started, whilst I keep up to date with the research, I also found myself thinking about what do the best bodybuilders do and what have they always done. And they've always just lent into really battering themselves. I don't know who the video was of. There was a video of a good bodybuilder recently. It was like how to grow your legs. And it was, his whole principle was like, if you look at any of the guys with big legs, they just lean into pain. They don't worry about anything else. They just brutalize the hell out of their legs. And so I was just, a bit of me was like, let's just see what this kind of meat shit, what's the saying, meat, whatever, what can my body do? Yeah. How far can I push myself? And I come back to that saying of the way to maximize growth is basically train as hard as you can, as much as you can, as often as you can, as long as you can. And that obviously, that sounds really simple, but you have to experiment and think about stealing from Coach Cass and fuck around and really find out where my limit is. And I just found actually the repeated bout effect is real. Yeah. And the body can deal with a lot more than maybe you think. And maybe too often I was looking at what others were doing to inform my practice versus what's happening to me in real time, because I'm someone who, I work from home, I have a low stress life, I just have a dog to take care of, and I don't have kids and other stressors and responsibilities that many might do. So if anyone can really push their volume to silly numbers or push their body in a brutal way, it's someone like myself. And I've always, like I said, been on the high volume tolerance end. So I just started to experiment a bit more, like really push the bounds. I'm interested to do it, for example, like for my quads. They're an area where I'm like, I really, not like you, Jeff, like I could steal some of your quad muscle if I could, but they're an area I really want to push. But unlike my shoulders, my knees started to be the limiting factor. Like my quads would be recovered, but I've got knee tendinopathy. I've had SI joint issues with my lower back, and this is leg training. Just, it's so brutal. It's hard to find ways to stimulate the muscle and not cause some joint and connective tissue discomfort. So yeah, it's been an experience, but good. Like it's been a good learning. I wish I hadn't given myself a knee tendinopathy. Physiotherapists will know the right term, but yeah, the shoulders at least have dealt with it.
How is your knee feeling? And I guess maybe what have been some learnings around that specifically there?
Big learning for me, Jeff, was, and I feel this is so silly because wisdom of older trainees is like shouting in my ears right now, where I'm just like, yes, it went in one ear and out the other, where they're like, hey, listen to your body, don't push through pain. But my ego got the better of me. I was looking at people who have very impressive quads, and I was actually someone like an AJ Morris you mentioned, the load he can lift on a hack squat is just crazy. I was like, I just started looking and I was like, come on, I want to hit these numbers. Come on, let's do it. So I started chasing load a little bit too much. In combination with that, I was digging around to try and see, is there any way I can bias the vastus lateralis, the kind of quad sweep? Because that's the thing I lack. I have good adduction, my inner thighs and everything are pretty good. It's that sweep. So started doing a little bit of investigating in there. And obviously there's no research to indicate, hey, if you have certain stances or whatever, you can bias different areas of the quad. But some people who are more expert in biomechanics have suggestions of, okay, let's go for that narrow stance. Let's kind of think about internal rotation, internal pressure. Let's maybe not squat quite as deep to maximize just knee travel forward and not extra kind of travel through the hips, bringing in the glutes, the adductors. So in combination with chasing loads and putting my body into a stance that maybe wasn't its most natural, I just got into a situation where I was just hammering myself on various lifts in the same exact pattern. And not only did I end up giving myself knee tendinopathy, but also I don't know what it is, but I strained my TFL, which is like the outer side of my left kind of thigh. I think it's the TFL, then I think it's a strain, but that's been hanging around for a long time as well. That really, I learned that the stance was the issue for the TFL, and doing too many movements that way was the problem. It took me a while to realize that too. I was like, I've tried so many different things. It's still pissing off my TFL. And I was like, let's just try going back to the way I used to squat. And I was like, it's like pain-free movement here. That's great. So that was a good lesson. I even ran, I think, blood flow restriction training. I ran for a month. And that was hell for quad training because I tried to do the same kind of set volume, counting, I think, each like set after the initial straight set as half a set. So I wasn't even counting them as like 0.75, which I probably should have. So it was horrible and brutal, but it was a good lesson. It taught me the tool of blood flow restriction training, which I've dabbled with but never done for kind of extended periods of time. And then I just had to be a bit more selective with movement patterns, finding what was pain-free, what wasn't, what stances are pain-free and what wasn't, and just swallowing my pride a little bit. On all leg sessions at the moment, I do like I do leg extensions, leg curls, abductor, adductor, and then I go into like my compound lifts just to make sure everything's warmed up, everything's a little bit already fatigued, so loads are less, and my kind of legs are in the best position possible. So yeah, not to be so stubborn, let the ego go, care more about stimulus, which is also pain, like positive pain is what I was referring to with, and that's what the IFBB Pro was talking about, positive pain, not just pain for the sake of pain. Those are some of the lessons for sure. Yeah, it's tricky once you're like chasing progressive overload, adding reps and load, and really having that chase for it. At the beginning of your bodybuilding career works really well, but towards the later part of your career, it can really start biting you in the ass because they're just realistically, for me to hit a PR, it should take a month at my training age and level of development. So I don't want to wait.
Yeah, no, I get it. And if you've always kind of trained that way, it's kind of just ingrained in you as well, too. So it sounds like it was a kind of a combination of just switching things up, chasing maybe load a little bit too much with combination of probably high volumes, and it just kind of caught up to you there. And like you said, trying to beat the logbook almost in a way and keep kind of progressing. Is it better now? Are you able to get back to kind of the volume that you want to be at, or?
So I haven't stopped. That's one thing. And that's one kind of good thing with tendinopathy, at least, is they don't do well rested. They actually kind of start getting worse. They need to be moved around, but you need to not push through any kind of, the thing I don't push through is the 3 out of 10 pain or discomfort. And I pay attention to that, but also how my knees feeling kind of pre-workout than post, and hoping they don't feel much worse if they do feel worse post, and kind of keep an eye on that. And then particularly the following day. If they're feeling worse the following day, then I know I need to adjust something. And volume is the easiest thing to adjust to make sure that you're not causing yourself a problem, but it's the thing that I really don't want to drop. So I tend to try and adjust other things. And the thing that's helped me the most, the pre-fatigue has been helpful because leg extensions cause me no problems and they blow my quads up completely, which is great. For the time being, avoiding sissy squats. I drop them in here or there, but they can be a bit of an issue for my knees. And then finding the movement patterns that are pain-free. So for me, belt squats, they're not as harsh in the bottom position when you're in that deep bottom position, so they work quite well. Leg press for me seems to work really nicely. Hat squats are a no-go. I tried them again this past week because, again, my ego and stubbornness to loving hack squats, but they pissed off my TFL. They always do, and I think that's something related to they don't allow my hips to travel back. They keep your hips forward in a fixed position, because if I do Smith squats, they're just fine. So I think I'm probably going to drop the hack squats, or I'm definitely going to drop the hack squats and put Smith squats in. They seem just fine. So it's just finding the movements that work. And then a lesson for me on stances has been, and I'm experimenting a little bit at the moment, and the new stance was an experiment. Rather than trying to do all my kind of quad compounds with that very quad bias stance, I'm going to do half my sets with that and then half just wider, more of my natural stance, and see if I can get a bit of that more vastus lateralis bias quad training in without causing myself a problem, and finding the right dose for me. So yeah, still like hammering the volume, but in a way that manages fatigue a bit better for me.
Yeah. And again, it sounds like too, just, and maybe this is also a good top, like being like looking at the logbook too. So are you just being a little bit more cautious on like with it as well too, to kind of limit that from that standpoint?
Yeah, definitely trying to be a bit more patient with it. And especially if a progression comes at the cost of feeling more discomfort the next day, I'll sit at that weight for a bit longer, because yeah, it's part of also having my volume that high is I'm also taking everything to 0, maybe 1 RER when I'm intending to take everything to 0 RER pretty much. Sometimes it'll be at 1 just because you can't always guarantee it. You could argue some of it's past failure because I go into partials and many movements, but yeah, that's part of it too, is because I'm already at my theoretical limit that week. I can't expect to be able to beat that on a week-to-week basis. Unfortunately, there's over the last couple of months, because Bali was basically a month and then I've come back. It's quite nice, I guess, in a way. When I was in Bali, there was no logbooking. It was just, again, brutalize the muscles. And then coming back, it's been I've made adjustments and I'm relearning movement. So I haven't really been that focused on the logbook. And I think that's just going to be a good takeaway for me, is to think more about how is that muscle responding versus beating the logbook. If I feel like I generated a better stimulus in the muscle but match numbers, I'm okay with that, and just be more comfortable matching. So
Yeah, man, that's for me probably been the biggest change I've had to make with my training lately, is just not like being careful with not forcing that progress, like not feeling like you almost kind of feel guilty of, oh, I should have progressed this week. It's like, oh, I'm doing the same thing. But it's like, man, you just got to slow that down. And again, I think the logbook's great, but I do see where it can sometimes like lead to some issues down the line, and you just start to maybe do more than what you need to. And you maybe start to end up, yeah, you're just not ready to make that next step yet. And we just think that progress is just linear like that. And for me, that's just been a hard thing to stay consistent with and focus on. That's kind of good to hear that seems like that's kind of been the same thing for you as well, too, to kind of make that adjustment to work around that.
Yeah, for sure. It's a tricky one because I couldn't ever remove the logbook, because I don't know about you, Jeff, but the logbook keeps me accountable.
Yes, absolutely.
If I'm getting under a heavy leg press, a heavy squat, if I haven't got a number of reps to achieve, I just will go and I'm like, I'll finish.
I'm good.
I could finish it. Yeah, 4 reps in reserve, just because I'm like, oh yeah, that felt really challenging. But if I have the number to achieve, I will work towards that. It's just being sensible about not fighting for maybe even 50-50 reps, which I'd normally go for during like a gaining phase, maybe leaving those. And again, really being sure not to change technique in a way that kind of leads to, yeah, you on paper have progressed, but in practice you just rushed your eccentrics or you cut some range of motion. Not to say I was, but I think sometimes you can be liable of doing that when you are chasing down reps. And like you said, being more comfortable with matching performance. And quite often I was getting to the point where I was like, okay, if I try and beat performance, I'll try and beat it on the last set. I'll see how I'm going. And then if I can, great, but I won't try and beat it on all the initial sets, because yeah, that's going to lead me into problems probably.
And then too, if you are having trouble saying match what you did previously, that could be a sign that you're under a little bit more fatigue, whether it be from, again, other stuff you have going on, residual fatigue, or sleep hasn't been great. And it's like, at that point, that's when I feel like you're most likely to have technique breakdown towards the end of a set as well too, which can again lead to some issues down the line as well too, right? So your technique can kind of break down under that. So I guess for you then, like, how do you, with you doing such a, like you kind of mentioned, hey, like I work from home, like you do this for a living. So again, you are someone that you have the ability to be able to really push volumes, but I know you're also very on top of your nutrition, your recovery, and that stuff does matter. So like, what have you been doing from that perspective to really make sure that you can continue to push these like higher volumes like you are?
Yeah, I guess from a nutritional perspective, I very much look at, and Eric Helms has this quote of nutrition is just permissive. So I'm just trying to provide myself sufficient calories, carbs, protein, fats, with decent enough nutrient timing to feel like I can perform like an animal in the gym. So long as I can do that, I'm not too concerned about being in a specific kind of surplus size or anything like this, especially once I got my body to like quite a resilient position since post shows. And also for me as Jeff, part of my problem is I hit an appetite ceiling, which is just ridiculous for the body fat that I'm at, but my body just hates getting past a certain body weight for some reason. That's my main focus for nutrition, is just fueling myself, feeling good. I eat a lot of fruit and veg, get over 10 combined kind of fruit and veg per day, not 20, so combined. Yeah, anyway, that makes sense, right? And so I get that in. I do eat very high protein, so with the new research that came out, it prompted me to just eat a bit more. And also as I was coached with Cliff through my comp prep, he is just a high protein buyer, so he had me on a higher protein diet than I was used to. I tended to always shoot for about a gram per pound of body weight. But with this research coming out, suggesting maybe up to 1.3 grams, you could see some benefits, maybe even beyond that. So I've just been like, hey, let's not hold that back. I'm on high calories. My calories are close to 4,000. I can eat a lot of protein. It's not a problem. I've been much less worried about carb to fat ratios, things like this, but I tend to eat like 500 grams of carbs. So they're certainly high. Fats sit around 80. If I need more flexibility, I will have more fat. So I don't have this. I used to have this kind of very high carb bias where I was like, oh, fat is only useful for essential fatty acids and like hormone production. But past that, it's easier stored as fat and it's not providing you, there's no insulin response from it. So have more carbs. But that is just needlessly restrictive. And I don't think it provides actually any real world benefits. So I still have a high carb diet, high protein diet, moderate fat diet for the most part. And yeah, eat loads of 4 meals per day, spread relatively evenly through the day. I think nutrition, I don't know about you, Jeff, but the longer I've done bodybuilding, the more we have discovered within the scientific research, the less it seems like the easier it is not to fuck up. It's like, don't go into training hungry. Have at least hit your protein by the end of the day. You get almost all the benefits. But if you split that between a breakfast, lunch, and dinner, hey presto, you've got 100% of the benefits, essentially. So it's really easy not to fuck up with nutrition. I do think bodybuilders love to make nutrition much harder for themselves than they need to. So just having, for myself, a bit of a default diet day to day has been the best, actually. So I know what 3 of my meals are for the day, and then my evening dinner is just rotates between a few different ones. So that's really the most I do with nutrition. The only thing that comes to mind outside of that is given the research that came out on nitrates, I just decided to work out how much spinach and beetroot do I need to eat to hit the efficacious amount of nitrates to help with blood flow and the potential kind of ergogenic benefits to training. So I do eat 150 grams of spinach and 80 grams of beetroot a day to try and keep my nitrate levels up pretty high, along with all the other fruit and veg. But I don't talk about that sort of thing very much because I'm like, it's such a minor thing that's doing almost very little. I consume a little bit more than I used to. I used to just do 3 grams. And then since more research came out talking about some of the extra benefits of potentially like for cognitive function and things. So I tend to do like close to 10 grams. I can't say I noticed any difference doing it, but I was just like, hey, there's not a clear negative. So I kind of index on maximizing things. That's why my protein gets pretty high as well. Anything else nutritionally? No, like I said, once I got to a point where I wasn't like super lean anymore, I didn't worry so much about trying to gain at a certain rate, but trying not lose weight was more of the objective. Unfortunately, I haven't managed that completely. I think this just tells me my body likes being smaller. There was a period over, I think it was the last Christmas that happened. I lost like 3-4 pounds out of nowhere. There was no real obvious cause for it. My weight just dropped and then I slowly built back up. And then with Bali, I did lose some body weight out there. It may have even been just only 2 pounds across 3 weeks, which isn't terrible. But I did get sick, which was not great. And that's more of the issue. But also, I was probably slightly under eating because I was letting my appetite guide more of my nutrition than like I'm at home. I'm just so on top of everything. And if I'm on top of my meals, I'll get them in easily. But if I'm not, then I can easily undereat, unfortunately. Nothing else nutritionally. Then we are seeing just generally everything else. How do I bolster like recovery, ability to recover from the volume? So yeah, then from a sleep perspective, like I said, I can dictate when I wake up. I can dictate my bedtime. And the only thing that's going to wake me up in the night is either my girlfriend or the dog, which does happen sometimes, but pretty rarely. And I'm so glad, Jeff, that I invested in aircon 2 or so years ago because we've had this killer heat wave in the UK. I'm sat here sweating now because it's just way too hot. But that's been a game changer for sleep when it gets hot. So that's made that my sleep environment's like a cave every night. Got an eye mask on, white noise, or had the white noise from the aircon there. I do ashwagandha, magnesium, basic supplement, nothing special, zinc. Not that really helps sleep, but I do those. Then I also supplement with, actually very often forget that I even do these supplements, but they were based off a discussion I had with Greg Potter. These are more for longevity, some arginine, and also glucose. There's some research for joint connective tissue health with glucosamine as well. And then arginine seems to have some longevity benefits potentially, which I do a little bit of that each day just because it's a bit of a security and let's go ahead and do that. Otherwise, yeah, like I said, I have no like wake time that I have to get up by, but I always give myself like pretty much a 9-hour sleep opportunity each night. So plenty of sleep. And then, yeah, just little stress outside of that, go for kind of dog walks, which keeps me off my ass. That's good for health, gets my step count, which is average around 12,000 steps a day, which is reasonable, nothing crazy.
That's lower than what you've done in the past, right? Like I kind of remember you doing like upwards of 15, 20 maybe or something like that. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but
yeah, I think if I was wearing my Fitbit, I think it would probably be 15,000. But whatever this Withings kind of tracker that I've used over the past years, it tracks my steps quite a lot lower.
Interesting.
So yeah, it was annoying for me because I was like, what the hell? I'd prefer you to over-index my steps than under. But it's probably good that I over anything else. But I used to quite often get like 20,000 steps on a weekend, like walking around London if me and Charlotte went out for food and things. But I struggle ever to get that high because of the way this watch works. So yeah, maybe a bit lower, probably pretty similar to what I've had in the past step count wise. But yeah, I don't do anything else special in terms of, I don't know, like sauna or ice baths. Not that I'd recommend that for recovery
Post-workout.
purposes. Yeah. Maybe if you're an athlete and you need to recover between games, but yeah, not for hypertrophy. So yeah, that mostly everything. I probably need to be better at coming off social media and my phone and things, actually. That's probably one thing that would help.
Don't we all? Don't we all? And I think, again, you're hitting the basics, right? It's like you're not necessarily doing anything special to be able to do this, right? I think from your nutrition, it's like you're not having this secret meal timing, create like you're just staying consistent with it, eating whole foods most of the time, right? Like enjoying that. Your protein's high, you're eating meals regularly, not going into your training hungry, you're not micro-analyzing every last little bit of carb you're having right before your training. But then I also wondered, like, the auto-regulation of your training, are you changing that at all in terms of how you're recovering, or is that something that maybe helps you as well too, to where you don't overdo things in your training to then that's obviously not going to be good for, because like my thought on training for hypertrophy is how can you put together the, like you said, the most volume, not necessarily the most, but a good amount of volume, train hard, and how can you like do that for as long as possible, right? I feel like that's a magic from like a training stimulus side of things. So I'm assuming that's probably a big piece of it as well too with your recovery, is just how you manage your training as well.
Yeah. One thing I'll just quickly mention, I do an intra workout. Not that I think that's a game changer or anything, but I do think for longer, higher volume sessions, especially if you're getting over an hour and a half, it can, not that it's going to replenish glycogen faster than if you didn't have it, but not that's a thing because I'm not training twice a day, same muscle groups at all. But it does keep blood sugar higher, which can help concentration within workouts. So I definitely find that's just, I only do 15 grams of dextrose, so it's not like it's a lot, but I think it's enough just to keep a bit switched on. So I do think if people are flagging within sessions, having some sort of intra workout, even if it's just a sugar-free, like you could just use flavored creatine in your shaker, and that might be enough. Just the flavoring to kind of trick, I don't know, like the pathway that it goes down might just keep you a little bit more focused in your workouts. Because I wonder if that's what the carbohydrate like mouthwashing works by, is that actually it's just like that dope neurological system that's going on because you're not getting the carbs or the calories. Anyway,
that's a good point.
But then auto-regulating training. So I guess what I did was slow transition. So like I said, at the end of prep, I was on a push-pull legs, certain level of volume. And then I was basically seeing how I was adapting, recovering, looking at my performance. And if I felt like, hey, I'm recovering ahead of time and I feel excited to do more volume, I'm like eager to do it. It's not like a huge burden to me. And then assess performance on a week-to-week basis. Is performance holding, or at least holding, if not improving? Then cool, that's set. I can manage it. It's in my recovery capacity. And I got to a point where on those push sessions, my chest volume was getting above 10 sets. My back was above 10. So I was like, hey, I'm better off spreading that out over more sessions. So then I moved to the upper-lower split. And then I started off at slightly lower volumes with that, more similar to where I already was. And then again, just slowly added a set here or there. And basically got to a point, Jeff, where I'm like, it's more of a psychological, just like I am doing a lot. I get to about 12 sets for chest and back within an upper body workout, along with arms and delts within that session and abs. So like it's a lot of volume within a single session. Could I possibly do more? And I think probably I could, but is that going to become a burden where I wouldn't be able to sustain that long term? Probably. And I think it would lead to the quality of work going down. I mentioned being excited for the work. It's probably this, I do the same sort of thing with client work actually, where I never want to work with a number of clients where if a check-in comes in, I'm like, oh my God, another one. Yeah. I never want to have that because I know the quality of service is going to go down. They're not going to get the best of me. Same within my workout. I don't want to be like halfway through my workout and be like, fuck my life, I've got so much more, because then you know the quality and effort isn't going to be there. And we have very clear research and like a huge amount of anecdotal research to just support how important training intensity is and really giving that muscle a good go, taking it close to failure. And if you've got so much work to do, you're going to sandbag. I've forgotten what they call it in the research actually, where essentially you're purposely holding back. What's it called? Pacing. That's the one, pacing. Where you're basically pacing, where you're like, you've got a lot more to do, so you purposely don't push yourself hard enough. So I was just so careful about ensuring I get to that point where I'm like, if I add any more now, I'm either going to start pacing or I'm going to cause an issue where I'm going to be under recovered next time to train that muscle. Because sometimes, Jeff, I'm on a Sunday, wake up, which is my rest day, and I'm like, I could probably train, but I don't really want to. And that Sunday rest day is a mental and psychological, and physical also refresh, so I can really make sure the next 6 days of training amazing. Because I do think people get tempted by that more is better, but then the quality of work just goes down, and you can't allow that. And I won't allow that to creep in. So the Natural Bodybuilding Summit was a good test for me, because I thought I'd be like, oh, Steve, you've been leaving a bit in the tank there because you've been trying to do so much. But actually, it confirmed that no, you actually do really take everything very hard to the house with your training. And I was like, great. That's what I hoped for, but I always have the worst kind of thought of myself.
Yeah, you always think can you do a little bit more? Can I work a little bit harder? Yeah, I think that also shows why where you're at with everything, right? But you obviously just have that drive to be better. But sometimes you got to check yourself for sure there. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You're just always kind of gauging, hey, if I feel like quality tends to go down, that's not the time to keep pushing more. Do you find though that from a day-to-day perspective, sometimes that is there? Because I would imagine that some days you're going to show up and maybe you don't feel fully motivated to train. It's just, hey, if I'm starting to notice that regularly, that's maybe a sign that I need to back off a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely a good thing to know. And thankfully, because my lifestyle's relatively static, I don't have lots of things going on all the time. I can very much rely on habits like brushing my teeth. I'm not motivated to brush my teeth, but I do every day. Similar training. I do go through times of which where I'm just like, I'm not motivated to do this or this much work, but I can get it done. I will get it done because I'm very driven by the end goal of trying to be my most competitive as a pro. So yeah, I'm definitely not excited to go train every single session. And I'm always skeptical of people who are always super excited to go train. I'm just like, sometimes you should probably be beat up. I'm definitely not 100% recovered all the time. I'm relatively under recovered all the time, but recovered enough to perform at the level that I need to.
In that state, have you ever backed off volume a little bit for one session is that something that you've been doing, or do you feel like you still stay pretty consistent with that volume across the board there?
Only when forced do I back off. So yeah, it was actually, again, coming back to the Bali trip. So I went out there and the camp was push-pull legs off, upper, lower. So there was inevitably going to be less volume that way because of the setup, but also I'm so used to antagonistic supersets and all of this, so my set volume was definitely way down. A lot of people, it was more volume than they're used to doing, and obviously higher intensity for a lot of people than they're used to doing. And so a lot of people got very sore, very beat up, and I was just like, I can do this all day kind of thing. And I was like, this is less than I normally do. And then the week after the camp, I was with Charlotte, came out and we had a vacation. And I was training every day, but in hotel gyms and trying to do it in an hour. And I was using a lot of the kind of time-effective techniques or efficient techniques. But the loads were light and so on and so forth. I was like probably dehydrated and under-eating a little bit. And so they just weren't the best sessions. And I came back, and that was last week. I came back into my usual program and everything got sore because I just went back because that's when I was really motivated to train, because I was like, I want to get back into the thick of my training. And yeah, my abs were sore for a week, and because I hadn't really trained those very hard, because I was like, abs, they're the last thing I'll do whilst I'm on holiday, so they didn't get a lot of loving. But everything pretty much got sore that first week because it was all just novel and an amount that I wasn't well adapted to. But going probably through into this week, I'm already way less sore, and probably gonna by next week probably have no, because the repeated bout effect will have just taken place, and I'll be back at handling everything again.
Yeah, I know you've kind of been talking about the Natural Bodybuilding. So I know you just recently got back. We were talking, you were gone for, I think you said close to a month between those two trips. I don't know. I guess maybe you were in Bali the whole time, but I'd be curious, what you guys do? And then it sounds like you've definitely had some good takeaways from like a training perspective. So I'd be curious to hear what you learned and what that kind of looks like.
Yeah, it was really cool. I just have to give a shout out to Brandon Kempter and Rachel Kempter.
You've had him on the pod, right?
Yeah, I had him on several times. He's a IFBB pro. I don't know if he's holding on to that pro card, but he's an incredible natural bodybuilder, really good guy, very smart. First time I met Rachel was out there as well, and she's within the field of research and teaching. Really cool to get invited, because I was aware of kind of Bali big time, and probably you are too, because of Jackson Pios and Undefeated Gym and Aaron Straker over there as well. So it was awesome to get the invite, because I'd been looking at for an excuse to get over there because I wanted to go to the gym. But it's a long way from home. So the total flight time was like 18 hours, I think.
Oh,
so
wow.
It was quite the journey. Yeah, it was a good excuse. And I'm glad that Brandon reached out very early, like 6 months or so before it, to invite me out there, because at the time it was so far away. I was like, it's fine. Yeah, I'll do it. Let's just do it. Whereas if it was like a month before, I'd be like, my kind of introverted self would come out and my dislike for flying would come out and I'd be like, no, I'm not going to do it. So yeah, it was amazing to get out there. And yeah, the premise of the camp was to really be like a camp. So we had coaches, including Nathan Wallace, who is a very good natural bodybuilder out in Australia. He's won basically every title you could possibly think of out there. He came third, I think, in WNBF Worlds 2024 pros maybe heavyweight class. But anyway, he only lost to Babacar and the Professor, who are like two of the most elite bodybuilders out there as well. So he's very good. Was out there as well, Emmerich. So like incredible natural bodybuilder as well. And then obviously Brandon and, why have I forgotten? One of the coaches for Brandon, I'm going to kill myself for forgetting his name. It's just completely escaped me. Jacob there as well. And he turned pro in his first season. He was 24 years old, which just still blows my mind. He's that young, because I think of myself at 24 and I was definitely nowhere near a pro standard of bodybuilding and
that's insane, doing
these sorts of things. But so we had the coaches there, and each day there'd pretty much be a presentation by the coach. So talking about a topic. So my topic was like essentially talking about it was the compounding physique. Just talking about daily habits and small things you can do that are 1%ers that over time accumulate to become something very significant. I might do a solo podcast talking through that if Brandon's happy with me doing that, because I think it's quite a cool topic and something most people need to hear, and something I definitely needed to hear later on in my journey. So yeah, every day there was pretty much a presentation. We're all staying at this one kind of hotel with rooms available, and so that was nice, all staying together, breakfast together, presentation together, then we'd go work out, have lunch together, dinner together, and Brandon often kind of set up a variety of different things to do in the evening. There was one day we went for a walk on the beach and there was the sunset. That was really nice. Or we'd go to different restaurants. Even on the rest day, there was like a ATV, journey around the kind of jungle and stuff. So that was a ton of fun. There was always something to do, and you just, like I said, it's a camp. So you're with everyone, with the coaches, all immersed together. And there was only, I think, around 20 other people as part of the camp, so it wasn't like a huge number. I spoke to everyone in the camp, got to know people, and for every session you worked with a different group, so every person got to work with every coach during that time, so they could pick up bits and pieces from every coach, see their style. Yeah, I had a little bit of imposter syndrome because of the caliber of Nathan and Dirk and like all the number of things they've won, but it was great to be there and to be part of it.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Again, I think that shows that even somebody, you've had a ton of success in the fitness industry, and you still get the imposter syndrome, right? But again, I think it just shows how big of a dent you've made with things here. What for you? I know you just kind of mentioned throughout you've had some what were some things you picked up from a training perspective, like some learnings. So I think you referenced throughout. Hey, you kind of talk about drop sets, but I didn't know if there was like some other big kind of takeaways and things that you kind of learned throughout that process that you're going to take with you and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was because I was the one taking people through the training, less lessons because I didn't get to train with every other coach and see what they were doing. But I definitely picked up some bits just from seeing how different people train. In that, something I noticed actually in my first training session, I was kind of machine pressing, and immediately someone started spotting me and assisting me through reps. And I was like, I am not used to that. That's weird. And I didn't like it, actually. I was like, no, I want to own my reps and I'll go into partials. It's fine. You don't need to assist me. So it was interesting seeing that. And you could see who trained with other people regularly because they would use those sorts of things. And then some people are a lot more in their own head and they're a bit more calm when they train. Other people way more kind of aggressive, and on that arousal spectrum, it made me think of that inverted U, where for some people they have to get really aggressive and out there, like Elaine Norton. I always think how shouty he is when he trains, and that helps his training performance. Whereas for other people, I always think of Mike Teixeira from Reactive Training Systems. He was always just chill when he would train. So kind of saw that individual difference there. And then obviously just small individual differences in how people would perform movements, their ranges of motion, but also their kind of pain tolerance. There are some people where you'd have to get really in their face and encourage them to keep going. Otherwise they would just stop. But they'd stop with many reps left in the tank. And no one in training was like novice. Everyone was well trained. I doubt there was anyone there with less than 5 years under their training, under their belt of consistent hard training. But you could just see some people really just didn't want to get into that pain cave. Most people did though. And most people's technique was fantastic and that they executed things really well. And there's only very small minor adjustments that you'd make on some occasions. And the other beautiful thing was just how I mentioned my imposter syndrome, but also I had a bit of just nerves surrounding coaching people through one-on-one training, because I was like,
been a while.
What are they? Yeah, it's been a long time. And then, I don't know, I had in my head that I could fail or people would be disappointed, but immediately everyone was just like, they wanted the best from me, for them, from everyone else. So just having that community drive with one another. I was talking to Eric Helms about it, and there's research looking at having training partners. And I think even just having people oversee you can help training performance. And I can definitely see how if you have the right people with you, that could really help your performance. So that was quite cool. But I definitely was unsustainable training, because probably if I wasn't the coach, it might be not as unsustainable, because I was very much having to watch everyone, make sure they're doing it properly, but also encouraging every session and every set. So it was a bit fatiguing just mentally doing that. But yeah, I can't think of any major lessons outside of that.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And I think you're somebody, I feel like I don't think you train by yourself most of the time, right? You don't have a training partner or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I am too. That's how I've done it for a while. I had a training partner for a short period of time, and it definitely does. It does definitely help you to push through, but that's kind of, I'm sure you feel the same way. It's kind of like my time to go and be by myself and do those things there. I am curious on the people that maybe they had a lower pain threshold, right? They didn't push as close to failure. Could you, and you don't have to speak on this, but could you tell a difference in their overall development of muscle and stuff like that? Or was that kind of like in that situation?
Actually, it's funny. In the situation I can recall, they were actually very well muscled.
Interesting. That's funny.
Yeah. It's funny because I think of myself and my arms, as we mentioned, are like they're a strength, but I can't say I go anywhere near as I do train my arms hard, but I feel like I train my legs way, way harder. But you look at my legs, you wouldn't be like, oh, that guy trains his legs super hard. But they're the thing I really push. So yeah, just I guess it was a little bit of a reminder of everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses, and just being aware of those is probably the key. So you do make sure to work hard on the areas that aren't so strong for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, like you said, you have some things you do. And again, I think with muscle, it is obviously, again, hard work is the most important thing, but there is a little bit of a genetic component to muscle, as we all know. And so sometimes you don't necessarily need to go all the way to failure. And there's obviously context around that, right? Like you said, your arms, you don't train as hard for your arms as you do your lower body, but your arms you're very well developed. Again, it is interesting. Real quick on the topic of range of motion, I'm just curious because I've seen this kind of in your kind of post lately. Is that something you've kind of changed your mind on a little bit in terms of like how you go about range of motion?
I don't think so. For the longest time now, I can't remember when Milo Wolf kind of put his meta-analysis out on range of motion and the impact on hypertrophy, and then they had that subsection looking at, actually, when you look at partial ranges of motion at long muscle lengths, sometimes they outperform the kind of full ROM. It's like, okay, most of the research was looking at short partials and they underperform, so there could be occasions to use lengthened partials. Ever since essentially that came out, I started experimenting, and it feels like it must have been like 4 years ago now. It feels like ages ago.
Yeah.
And I definitely I have come to like a somewhat of a conclusion, or at least a practical way of implementing it, is I do always try and take a muscle through its length and range within exercises. And I guess actually, some of my thoughts surrounding range of motion have changed, because I used to very much think about exercises versus muscles. So that's where I come to like quad training. I used to just sink squat patterns as deep as possible. Like arse to grass was like the philosophy. And that did great work for my adductors, for my glutes. And my quads grow a little bit, but they're big developed muscles on my physique because sitting arse to grass was very natural to me, and I did it for a long time. Whereas I think to maximize growth for the quads specifically, you want to think about where do the quad muscles get to the longest muscle length and like peak levels of tension, mechanical tension and force. And that's where I started to experiment with maybe coming less deep, but still really trying to get knees over toes and not stretching out the adductors and letting the glutes take over their kind of strengths for me. So I started to think about muscle specific ranges of motion versus exercise specific ranges of motion. So that's probably one of the main examples that I've done that on. But certainly even for my back training, where obviously like I've used length and partials because the strength to resistance profile are mismatched in that you'd fail in that short position when you're strongest in the lengthened. So to take that muscle truly close to failure, which seems to be super important for growth, going to partials there makes sense. Whether or not you do just partials full stop, or if you go full ROM into partials, I'm very open to both. Not a problem, but I do think going into those partial ranges, if you really want to kind of grow that muscle well, makes sense. And it's like just an easy way to get some additional stimulus for that muscle. But for my back training, I used to move my torso a lot more, and that would just hit so many more muscles, whereas I'm much more specific about trying to bias certain muscles on my physique. So on a like lat pull down, I'd let my shoulder blades come all the way up and elevate, and then I'd pull all the way down and I'd lean back. Whereas now it's very much thinking about, okay, do I want to let the scapula rise, or do I feel like I managed to keep more tension on my lats by keeping that kind of active range? I don't think there's a right or wrong answer in these things, and sometimes I move between both. I'm much more open to that, but there's much less kind of movement of my torso within my back training, where you end up bringing in like erectors a lot of the time, and you distribute tension from lats to upper back. And it's like, again, I come back to that. I kind of see it as a first principle within bodybuilding training is it's so important to take the target tissues close or to failure. And if I end up incorporating a lot of different muscles, how can I be sure that I'm taking the specific area I want to grow to a failure? And I do think my back has really seen good improvements from a combination of being a bit more refined with movement patterns, but also going into lengthened partials to get a bit more stimulus overall. Probably partly why I could get up to 70 sets all the way back then was I was probably leaving, like, the back had so much more to give, because I was very strict about full ROM, must bring the bar to chest type of thing with lat pull downs and things. But yeah, so I think that's the position I've been at for a while. Is I came to using lengthened partials, and then over time I started to refine my exercises to think more about, okay, what's the range of motion for the target muscle versus just the lift as a whole. And even to the point of, for like chest training, thinking, yes, we want to get into that lengthened range, but I don't want to get at such a long muscle length, or even into just passive tissue length, as in you can come deeper, but you just start stretching passive tissues, not necessarily the chest. And do I end up reducing mechanical stress and tension? Do I feel weaker? And if I do, I'm not sure if that's best. So I think some of the research is indicating that we need to get to a long muscle length, but the longest length isn't super important. There was that, you probably saw that research looking at the basically Bayesian curl, where either the participants had the elbow come just by the body, or they let it really come behind the torso, and they saw kind of equivalent growth between the two. And it's, for me, I'd never felt the one that you let your elbow come way behind the body. I never felt that good in my bicep. It always just felt a lot in my shoulder. So, hey, we don't have to go to these extreme ranges probably. We just need to make sure we get to a longer muscle length in general. And so long as we get close to failure, outside of that, we're speculating. I think at this point, I don't know if we'll ever get sufficiently refined tools to know if one's necessarily better than the other. And then does it all just kind of level out or wash out once you just push volume up, or you look at the program as a whole, these sorts of things?
Well, I think all that stuff does go hand in hand too, right? Because you were kind of saying, if you take your back example there, again, the like you said, the principle of bodybuilding training and hypertrophy is, like you said, you want to take things close to failure, but it's the target tissue that you want to take close to failure, right? Not necessarily just the movement in itself, right? So I like that you kind of think that way, because again, like you're saying, if you start to have other muscles take over, it's maybe those shouldn't necessarily be working in that case, right? And so it's like, I do think there's obviously that downstream impact of how that can impact your ability to recover elsewhere. But that's good to hear, because I feel like that's been the big thing too for me, is just like full ROM, but not necessarily full max ROM. It's that muscle's full range of motion. That's probably what you want to focus on, but that doesn't necessarily mean you need to do the max range of motion, right? Because I do see that a lot with like you said, lat pull down is a great one, where it's like, hey, do full range of motion. So then people, like you said, go way overhead, and it's like, all right, that's probably a bit too much, right? And then also, like you said, maybe not necessarily always feeling like you have to go all the way absolutely down to your chest either, right? Again, I think those are good insights, and I agree with that there. I think it's good because Dr. Mike, right? Love Dr. Mike, full range of motion. That was where that kind of came from. And I'm sure he wouldn't necessarily say that, but it is funny to just kind of see it come full circle there with that. So good stuff, man. I guess, are you planning on competing again soon? What does that kind of look like, and what's kind of coming up for you?
Yeah, so I'm lining things up to compete next year, unless I don't think I'm improved enough. But at the same time, Jeff, it's been the amount of effort I've put in over the past improvement season, off season. Like I need to have improved enough. Like it's been enough time to have improved enough. And I also just want to kind of get my feet a bit more wet in the pro ranks. I did Worlds and the Swiss Pro Show last time, and that Swiss show, the lineup was just incredible. And then at Worlds, it's Worlds, so it's the best of the best over there. So quite a brutal couple of shows to have to go into as a pro. So I'd like to do quite a few Europe, like a bit of a European pro circuit with the WNBF. I think would be nice. So maybe like Italy, France, Germany, see what's going. I'd do the UK show, which I didn't get to do in 2024. I'd love to do that on home turf. That would be quite exciting. And then probably WNBF Worlds, depending where it is. So that'd be 2027, like this time next year, kind of having started prep, actually be quite in the depths of prep at this time next year, probably starting prep in about May time, probably work quite well. I had planned post Bali to do a little pre-prep tidy up and then just very slowly gain towards that time, but it happened a little bit without me trying. So I'm eating up for a little bit more time now, and then I will do a little bit of a tidy up towards the end of the year to then allow myself to be kind of get myself down to that lower intervention point of body fat where I still feel good, but I know if I'm off a little bit, I start feeling it. Kind of hover around there, maybe gained a pound or two, and then start prep, around May next year. So that'll be exciting.
Yeah. Will you use a coach again this time around, or are you going to try and go solo?
I'll definitely have a coach for prep. Yeah, I
Okay.
just saw so many benefits of having someone in my corner.
Yep.
It was a very stressful year for me, which I've spoken about, of course, before. But I think even without that stress, having someone to just report to, tell me the direction to go, will just be so beneficial for me. So yeah, I'm quite excited about having someone take the reins for that period of time and to learn again.
TBD on who it's going to be, or you have an idea?
I have an idea, but yeah, I'm not going to announce it just yet because it's so in the future, but I definitely have an idea.
Love it. Cool, man. Anything else coming up on your end? Anywhere else where you want to lead audience to or anything like that?
Nothing. I've, over the past years, come a bit to just liking doing coaching and the podcast, and then just social media and not having too much other things going on, because it's like anything, you become a bit washed. Yeah, simplify. So if I'm to direct anyone to Revive Stronger podcast, the Improvement Season podcast, and then our coaching.com and over on Instagram, Revive Stronger. But yeah, maybe this event did make me want to do some more seminars and in-person stuff. So that's to be announced. If there might be something there, if there's enough interest, I'd love to do something to get some community going, because yeah, there's so many people that, like yourself, Jeff, who I'd love to meet and spend time with, but we're so spread all over the place and everyone's busy. So it needs to be enough foresight, but also something that's significant enough to make sure people would come to it. So yeah, there's something in my head about wanting to do some community event type of deal.
Yeah, that's awesome. Those are always fun, right? And you always feel super good after doing that and talking to other people there, right? Yeah, I think those things are great. Like you said, the tough part's just getting everybody together that are just all over the world and stuff like that. Awesome, man. Keep up the good work. I love to see you continue to grow, and I'll always love catching up with you and checking in and seeing how things are going. And again, we'll obviously get you on in the future. So really appreciate your time, Steve. And yeah, man, we'll talk to you soon.
Of course, anytime. Thank you so much.